This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
Will AI be more impactful than the internet? It's something that I read about it all the time. I hear other people talking about it. People ask a lot of questions, so I wanted to talk about that today on Everyday AI. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jordan Wilson, and I'm your host, and we're going to talk about that and a lot more. But if this is your first time, thank you for joining us. This is a daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter to help everyday people like me and you not just understand AI, but how we can all actually leverage it. All right. So, and if you're joining me live, thank you. Couple technical difficulties this morning, but we're ready to get going. So before we talk about if AI will be more impactful than the internet, and guess what? It will be. But before we get there, I first wanted to talk about what's going on in the world of AI news. All right. So OpenAI is eyeing a $1.3 billion year in annual revenue. So recent reports are showing that OpenAI's CEO, Sam Altman, has reportedly said that monthly revenue right now is more than $100 million, and the company is targeting $1.3 billion in annual revenue this year. So this comes after some recent reports valued OpenAI at more than $90 billion. So very large valuation for a company that is kind of still new, at least when it comes to commercial products. All right, next piece of news. Some former employees of Neuralink are speaking now about the risks. So in a new article in Vox, some former employees of Neuralink, and Neuralink is Elon Musk companies, which is developing a brain chip to implement to help people with paralysis. That's at least what they're saying, kind of the major use case for, but to actually implant a brain chip to help people with paralysis. So the technology could obviously improve the quality of life for millions of people, but it also carries a lot of risks. So Neuralink recently got FDA approval to run clinical trials in humans, and now, former companies at the former employees at Neuralink are sounding the alarm because as tech is getting closer to trials, former employers are now saying that the tech can be dangerous and it is unnecessarily invasive. All right. Our third story of the day is that AI is going to cause a financial crash, and it's unavoidable. So that is recent messaging from the head of the SEC, which is the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. So the head of the SEC, Gary Gensler, said in a recent interview that it is nearly unavoidable that AI will cause a major financial crash, either later in the 2020s or early in the 2030s. So within a decade, we are now hearing the head of the SEC say it is essentially unavoidable that AI will cause a financial crash. So some big news here this morning, and thank you everyone for joining us. I know we probably have some weird tech glitches, so if you're joining us live, that's okay. Still, what are your thoughts? And let's get back to the topic at hand. Will AI be more impactful than the internet? I'd love to hear what you all think, and I'll try to share some of your comments. But I thought we'd get this week started off with some hot takes. And let me just go ahead and answer. And you can probably guess my answer, but I want to provide some reasoning. But yes, artificial intelligence will be much more impactful than the internet at large. All right, so let's first let's talk stats first, right? Before I give you some hot takes and maybe look into the future a little bit. I always like bringing stats. Okay, so I want to look at two different kind of large scale studies. All right, both done by large consulting companies and financial institutions. All right, so the first one looked at the history of kind of the internet and what it meant to the GDP, right? So for the amount of money we produce as a company. So this was a report from McKinsey, and it essentially showed that the internet now contributes, the internet now constitutes about 3.4% of the global GDP, right? But that's after 30 years. So after 30 years, roughly, we're coming up on about 30 years of the internet being available to the general public. So it took about 30 years for the internet to constitute about 3.4% of the global GDP. All right. So now let's look at another study, and this one from Goldman Sachs. So this one is saying that generative AI in its first 10 years is expected to constitute about 7% of the global GDP. All right. So we're talking about 1/3 of the time, AI is expected to be about twice as impactful. All right. Let me just recap that again. 30 years of the internet, and it constitutes about 3.4% essentially of what we produce, right? Where generative AI, it is projected to be in the first 10 years to constitute 7%. So 1/3 of the time, twice as impactful as the internet, right? And it's also important, like who's making these studies, who's giving us this information. I think management consultants in general initially wrote off AI because maybe they saw it as a threat to their business model. Everyone said, oh, generative AI means you're going to have a McKinsey in your pockets. But now all of these management consultant companies and banks, financial institutions, they've all made multi-billion-dollar investments into the generative AI technologies and AI technologies in general. Because I think they all misunderstood it about what generative AI is and how impactful it can be. So how much more impactful will generative AI be than the internet? Well, let me explain a couple things too. I've lived on the internet most of my life, right? I even when I was 12 years old, I got a paper route and bought my first computer probably when I was about 12 years old. So that would have been in the mid 90s, right? So right after the internet came out. I've always been a dork, saved up my money, bought a computer, finally got online. So I've been online, right, for the majority of my life. Right. And I think the internet has helped us share human intelligence, right? But the internet did not create anything new on its own. It's just a new road to share intelligence, right? So let's look at AI, because AI is changing what intelligence means. All right. Even our current systems are pushing human intelligence. And now we have AI agents as well, right? That are just starting to, kind of come into popularity after they were probably a little too early on. But now we have AI agents, which are essentially, if you think of multiple AIs interacting with each other and sharing information and improving upon different iterations of a project without human intervention. That's where we're heading, right? Not even talking about artificial general intelligence. We have AI agents that are again, most of y'all probably listening probably don't pay too close attention. I play around with AI agents here and there, but when we look at the difference between the internet and AI, that part is very important. All the internet did is it allowed us to share intelligence. AI is changing what intelligence means, right? So then I think it's also important to look at what OpenAI is even working on, right? Like we talked about at the top of the show, their $90 billion valuation. They're eyeing, $1.3 billion in annual revenue this year. So they're working openly on artificial general intelligence, right? So what does that mean? That's essentially AGI. And I'll probably have to devote an entire episode to AGI down the line. But AGI is when the systems that we build far exceed their training, and they start to make decisions that are outside of what we even trained them for, right? So now I talked a little bit about the internet and how impactful it's been. And there's no understating it, y'all. Like the internet changed how the world operates. But here's what happened. It took, I think, even when we look at the dot-com, bubble in the late 90s, when the internet kind of changed the rules. But it took a very long time, I think, for the average company or the average person to really have to leverage the internet, right? I was working full-time as a journalist when I was a junior in high school. I was literally working, I think it was, 37 and a half hours a week as a journalist, in 2002, 2003, something like that. Even at that time, the internet had been widely available for almost a, not quite a decade, but almost a decade. And still companies like, news organizations were like, we don't need to really put anything on the internet. So it took companies, they had this long period of 15, 20 years to adopt to the internet. So when I talk about will AI be more impactful, I shared those stats in the beginning of the show. So essentially, artificial intelligence is expected to be about 3 times more impactful when it comes to generating revenue. Or sorry, twice as impactful in 1/3 of the time. What do y'all think? I know we're having some tech delays here on the live stream, but don't worry about it. I'm still looking at your comments. So thank you for joining. Ben with a great thought here. He says, it's more AI and the internet. The compute power of AI connectivity of the internet opens so many doors. I absolutely agree. So obviously I'm not alone in saying that the AI is much more impactful than the internet. But I want to just give you two examples. So in 1995, Bill Gates, then the Microsoft founder and CEO, I believe that was his title at the time, he sent a famous company-wide memo that called the internet a tidal wave that could change all the rules. Okay? With AI, we're playing a new game. We're not changing the rules, right? How the internet was just changing the rules, right? So now I want to talk about present day. And now I want to talk about another big tech CEO. So Google's CEO, Sundar Pichai, recently said that AI will be more impactful than the discovery of fire and electricity. Right? I don't know if any of you saw that. I believe this was in an interview with 60 Minutes. And we kind of, we reported on it for the day and we all kind of swept it under the rug and kept going. But now when you think of all of these other things happening, right? Look at the power of those words saying AI will be more impactful than fire and electricity. That's not me. That's not, old man Jordan ranting about, oh, AI is cool. Check it out. That is the CEO of Google, right? Saying that AI will be more impactful than the discovery of fire and electricity. So you can laugh and say, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's a wild claim," but I think it's rooted in a lot of truth. And speaking of truth, I think even the reason why I thought it was important to have this show to draw these parallels between artificial intelligence and the internet is I believe that the average person is comparing the two. And I think it's actually a little dangerous. It's dangerous for us as individuals who are trying to grow our careers. And it's also a dangerous thought or a dangerous comparison, I believe, for companies as well. Because, like I talked about with the internet, it was this very slow rollout. Because I think the more that we used the internet in the early days, the more we understood it, right? So then we became comfortable with it and we slowly integrated it into our daily lives, into how our company, into how our companies run. I don't think AI is like that, right? I'm someone that uses different AI systems every single day. I've talked to probably more than 100 now on the Everyday AI show. I've probably talked to now more than 100 different guests, from leaders at the world's largest companies to everyday entrepreneurs, business owners. And I still don't feel even some of the smartest people that I've talked to still fully understand generative AI, because there's a big difference. The more you use the internet, the more you understand it. The more you actually use generative AI, the more perplexing I think it becomes, right? Because then we start to get little glimpses here and there of its power, right? This is something all the time. People with ChatGPT, we do twice a week, we do a free class called Prime Prompt Polish. And I had one this past Thursday. I was kind of, it's a live course. We teach people, it's free. We teach people the correct ways to use a large language model. And we just go into a little background of what large language models even are. And so many people, I remember on Thursday, were like, my mind is blown, because I was showing them how a large language model actually works, right? And a lot of times we just go and we use these AI systems and we just get a little confused. And as someone that's spent now, I should have an hour tracker somewhere. As someone that's spent more than 1,000 hours inside just ChatGPT, even still, the more time I spend, the more perplexed I often am. Because the reality is, ChatGPT will probably, in a year from now, will be maybe the much less disruptive than I think it is or could be right now. I always go on my rants that I think ChatGPT with plugins is probably the most disruptive force that a business, the probably the biggest weapon that a business could be using right now, but isn't.
Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on Gen AI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front-end AI strategy, you can partner with us too, just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
And I think that in a year or two, I don't even know if ChatGPT is going to be in the conversation. I mean, I think it will be, But I think Microsoft Copilot is going to be extremely disruptive, right? So when we talk about will AI be more impactful than the internet? Absolutely, it will. And I think I will have dropped the ball if I didn't mention why people on the other side, right? I'm obviously an advocate for generative AI. I talk about it every day. I try to teach people. We try to put out great value. We try to put out, a ton of information that you can use to grow your company, to grow your career. There's people who write it off, which is fine. But I want to talk about some of the reasons why people write it off. Number one, it's because they don't understand it. They don't understand it. Again, we had a decade plus to understand the internet, and it was very easy to understand. When you use the internet, it was easy to understand. When we use generative AI, it's not quite as easy. You're saying, how am I able to create all of these things so quickly? Is it ethical? What's going to happen to my job? When all of our, when companies from the top down start to understand and leverage generative AI. So using AI can be a confusing thing, but one of the most common misconceptions is this terrible saying that I wish we would all stop saying, that AI won't take your job. Someone using AI will. It's a terrible saying. I'm sorry. Whoever was the first to say that, and now, 1,000 people every day just copy and paste something similar on Twitter so they can build up an audience and sell you something. I think that is one of the most, it's just a phrase we have to stop saying, because it is patently false. All right. Number one, AI is gonna take jobs, period. Someone using AI will also take jobs, but more than one. That's the thing I keep talking. It's not a one-on-one trade-off. It's not, the one person using generative AI will take the job of the one person who is not using generative AI. That's an argument that we should have been using 20 years ago when it comes to the internet, because that's factual. And I agree, right? 20 years ago, hey, the internet won't take your job. Someone using the internet will. Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Because again, the internet just helped us share human intelligence. AI is creating its own, right? We've already seen it. We're not even in the age of artificial general intelligence. When we think of, Terminator and Skynet and all these things, that it's even harder to wrap your heads around. But AI, even right now, is creating its own intelligence. It is. And I'll argue people on that, because they say, oh, Jordan, well, right now, all AI can really do is, what it's trained to do within its model, within its, 1.8 trillion parameter, it's GPT-4. That's its, big, large language model. It's 1.8 trillion parameters. I don't think so. I think AI can still create new things that we haven't seen before. That's why we all use it, right? Yes, it is essentially a collection of everything that's already been ingested on the internet, and, millions of books and works of art. But AI is already, I think, creating its own type of intelligence. And we're not even yet in the age of artificial general intelligence. So I want to get to a couple comments here. And again, if you're listening on the podcast, thank you. We always leave something in the show notes for you to reach out. I'd love to hear, what you want us to tackle next on the show. And I'd love to hear from you too, if you think AI will be more impactful than the internet. And to everyone joining live, thank you. I'm going to get to a couple of your comments here. I know we have some technical issues. So Harold saying AI would not have the capacity to be as impactful without the internet and the infrastructure that was created by the internet. Good headline, but they are symbiotic. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Without the internet, yeah, we would have no generative AI, because generative AI is essentially, like I said, it's a collection of everything good and bad that has ever existed on the internet and a lot more. Kieran, thank you for the comment. Kieran saying AI will be more impactful than the discovery of fire and electricity. Yes, that was from the Google CEO, Sundar Pichai. Let's see what else. What do y'all think as we wrap up today's show? Abdar says AI will impact more industries than even the internet. For example, education, manufacturing, retail, and transportation will be disrupted by AI. But consumer mobile internet enabled the fastest growing. Yes, enabled the fastest growing sector. Absolutely. Yeah, we can't skip over the fact that obviously the internet essentially did create artificial intelligence, right? Because without it, I don't know how large language models would have been able to come into existence. So yeah, and I'm definitely not trying to compare the two. I'm trying to compare the human reaction to the two and to draw a parallel, because yes, the internet was very impactful, but like I said, the internet was not creating its own intelligence. It wasn't. It just brought, I think it revolutionized the ability for humans to access information. I remember when I used to need one simple answer to something. I would first, if we had, an encyclopedia or a dictionary in the house, you'd start there. But anything other, you'd have to go to the library, and you might have to spend hours looking up just for one piece of information, right? So yes, obviously the internet, we can't overlook its impact on society, on business, on personal growth, all of those things. Really what I wanted to get to into today's show is to kind of debunk this claim that, AI is just kind of like the internet. It's going to follow a similar path. We're all, yes, it's a big technology, but all we have to do to see what's going to happen because of AI, people say, let's look at the path of the internet. Let's look at, how we as humans and how different industries and verticals in companies around the world, let's see how they reacted to and took advantage of the internet. And that will be our playbook for how we do the same with generative AI. But it's definitely not like that. It's definitely not like that. All right. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you. And please continue to keep the conversation going in the comments on LinkedIn. And again, if you are joining us on the podcast, we always leave links. Come in and join the conversation. But I'll leave it with this. I'll leave it with a high level recap. Will AI be more impactful than the internet? Absolutely. We can't even begin. I don't think we can't even begin to fathom. And I think that drawing any comparisons or any parallels to how the internet impacted different sectors or industries. If we say, look at what the AI did to Blockbuster. And yes, Jordan, maybe the internet in theory led to the demise of the video store, led to the demise of Blockbuster. But look at all the new industries it created. Streaming videos, and now you have thousands of people working on new internet video technologies, and you have Netflix, and you have Disney Plus, and you have all these new supplementary or complementary industries that were created because of the internet. It is not going to be like that with artificial intelligence. That is kind of ultimately the point of why I wanted to have a show like this, because I think now after spending the majority of my days trying to, over the past 5 or 6 months since we started Everyday AI, talking to very intelligent people, trying to read and understand artificial intelligence, the more time you spend with it, it is not going to be the same, right? We're not going to have industries go through kind of like the Blockbuster to Netflix transition per se. That is not how it's going to work, right? AI is going to be extremely disruptive. All right. Yes, there's a lot of exciting and new possibilities and new industries that will be created, but This isn't supposed to be a show where we end on a down note, but I will go back to one of the pieces of news that we talked about. When the head of the SEC says that it is nearly unavoidable that AI will cause a major financial crash within the next decade, I'm going to say it's going to be much faster than that, right? We cannot think of artificial intelligence the same way that we thought or think of the internet. If you have that mindset, you need to change it, right? Whether it's for your own personal growth, whether it's what you're trying to learn, whether it's the direction your company is heading. Do not look at the playbook that we created through the internet, going from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3, whatever you want to call it. It is not the same thing. The internet is how we shared information. Artificial intelligence is creating its own. But don't worry. Every single day, if that scares you a little bit, that's okay. I think we grow. We grow as individuals. We grow our careers. We grow our companies when we're a little scared, when we're a little uneasy. But I wanted to prepare everyone because I think there's just a lot of bad information out there. There's people drawing these conclusions and these parallels that I think aren't rooted in truth, right? I hope today's show showed you by sharing some facts, sharing some truths, can help you better prepare. And you can do so every single day with us. We bring on experts almost every single day. Sometimes you get just me, but we have some great shows lined up for you this week. So if you want to take advantage of everything that artificial intelligence has to offer us, if you want to grow your company and grow your career with AI, please join us the rest of the week at Everyday AI. We have some great episodes planned. So I hope to see you back for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.